Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Callender, every one of these frauds involves the American banking system because it's where the money started, whether it's ends up on a money card or it's done through a credit card or it's done directly through a checking account, a wire transfer. So can you describe in a general sense how you're working with the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the Federal Reserve Bank, and the Treasury Department?
Well, we've worked with the investigators from some of those departments and agencies from Treasury. But really, I mean, it's a crime centered around the victims and the evidence they possess. And I can tell you, quite a few of these crimes happen cash, through the mail, through FedEx. It's not just the banking system.
Fair enough, right, Mr. Callender, that some of the money undoubtedly is cash and FedEx, but we just had two witnesses who sat here and every single thing they described went through the American banking system and touched the American banking system. Right. And the reason I ask about this is Western Union is describing the steps they are taking voluntarily in order to detect and close down these operations. These are the three federal banking regulators that I've named who are responsible for overseeing the activities of our banks in terms of their responsibilities to detect and to close down operations that involve money laundering. So I just want to know, have you reached out, have you talked to the regulators about whether or not they, in fact, are examining the banks on this very question of how they deal with these scams when this money is moving through the American banking system?
We have, ma'am. We call it Operation Cornerstone. It's an operation we've had going on for several years, and all of our offices nationwide go to the local banks, go to the regulators. We brief them on the crimes and the different money laundering techniques. What's the latest? What they can look out for. Part of that is a telemarketing effort. There's many other facets to that as well, but it's Operation Cornerstone, and we do it continuously.
Well, I appreciate that you go to the local banks, but my question is, are the banks coming up with their own procedures to monitor this? We have banking regulators who evaluate the banks and supervise the banks in terms of whether they are complying with our laws about dealing with money and money laundering. And I just want to know if you're talking with the bank regulators, not the individual banks, but the bank regulators.
Personally, I have not. I know we have our headquarters component that does do that, talk to them on our behalf. As part of JOLT down there, we didn't leave the country to go talk to the regulators. No.
Well, fair enough, and
but,
I understand
yes, it is happening at a headquarters
level.
It is having a more of a strategic level by people in our agency, yes.
I'd just be grateful as we go forward to be able to learn more about this and find out what's being done at the regulatory side. And it's for all of the scams here that attack our seniors. If I could, there's another question I wanted to ask you. You mentioned, I think, in your testimony, perhaps it was in your written testimony, about what are in effect the sucker lists that get passed around that are enormously valuable. And we heard earlier about the work of the AARP, and I'm familiar with it. They've done some extraordinary work and put extraordinary private resources into trying to warn people and trying to help people avoid the consequences of these scams. And it's my understanding that they've asked for these lists to be shared, these sucker lists, and that you have not agreed to do that. And I want to understand, first, if that's right, and secondly, why?
Well, there's, unfortunately, we have privacy issues with this information. Some of it is how we derive it. Some of it's derived through our partnerships with Western Union, with the Federal Trade Commission. Some of these lists we pick up during, or the Jamaican government picks up during execution of search warrants in Jamaica, and their privacy laws do not allow the sharing of that information, as well as some of our laws and policies, or rules and policies as well.
So are you telling me, just because I want to understand this, are you telling me this is just a brick wall, there's no place to go with this?
No, these are things we've definitely worked on, and we've established memorandums of understanding with the Federal Trade Commission. about sharing of this type of information. But to disclose that to the AARP, at least at this point for us, becomes a privacy issue.
Are you moving toward trying to find a way to be able to disclose this to the AARP, or is that avenue right now just cut off?
We're always working to further these cases and make what we do more effective. And notifying the victims is definitely something we would, or potential victims, if we have that ability, is something we want to be able to do.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Callender. May I have 1 minute? Because I'm going to be really quick on this. Oh, thank you. Mr. Tiller, I just wanted to ask a question about the work of the Postal Service, that you're out here trying to engage in enforcement to try to protect our citizens. We read a lot about the Postal Service facing financial cuts, that there have already been cuts, that there are perhaps more cuts in the future. Could you just speak very briefly to the potential impact of these cuts on your ability to enforce our postal laws and protect our seniors from being scammed?
Very good. Of course, we understand that the Postal Service is in serious economic crisis, but we have to understand that criminals don't stop committing crime based on the Postal Service's volume or their income. So we're still out there every day, 7 days a week, fighting crime to identify these victims, to help preserve the sanctity of the seal and protect American public from that mail hurting them.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I apologize. I have a group of high schoolers waiting for me, so I'm not going to be able to stay for the last few minutes. But thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, you are an excellent member of this panel. Senator Warren, we appreciate your expertise and the passion that you bring to this committee.